So welcome everyone. We're really excited to have you tune into this training, and we're going to be talking about child tax credit outreach in schools and how schools can help connect families to thousands of dollars this tax season. And my name is Julia Beebe, and I'm here with two organizations, the Partnership for America's Children, which does child advocacy work at the state and national level, and the Coalition on Human Needs, which does advocacy work for families and children across the country. And I'm joined by my partner, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Sarah McKittrick. I am a project manager at the Shaw Family Foundation. We focus primarily in Massachusetts. We're a Boston-based nonprofit committed to empowering everyone to access the fundamentals of well-being, especially in the areas of food access, health, wellness, and education. Together, we came together with a few really key partners to increase access to the child tax credit. So we created findyourfunds.org, a simplified website to help people get what they need in Massachusetts and where to find free help. So we did a ton of school outreach as part of this work, and I'm very excited to be sharing some of the best practices that we learned with you today.
So today we're going to talk about the child tax credit, and we're really excited to be talking to all of you as school leaders, as educators, as family liaisons, school counselors, parent leaders, others who are really engaged in schools and districts. And we think you're particularly well suited to reach families and make sure they know about this tax credit. And we'll say at the outset and throughout that you don't have to be a tax expert. We're really just conveying information that you can simply take and pass it along, and we're here as a resource if you do have any questions. So the child tax credit isn't something new, but it was expanded last year as part of the American Rescue Plan, along with other tax credits. And with this expansion, it means that nearly 90% of children in the US are now eligible for the CTC. And in order to get the child tax credit, whether it's the remaining half, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, or the full amount, everyone must file a 2021 tax return this year to get that money. And people might be familiar with the April 18th filing deadline. That is true, but if someone doesn't have a filing obligation, if they have no or very low income, they can continue to file throughout 2022. And we wanted to just talk a little bit about the impact of the child tax credit. We have here that for kids under the age of 6, the amount of the credit is $3,600 per child. And so for families who received advanced CTC payments last year, they were receiving $300 per month between July and December. And then for kids up to 17, the amount is $3,000 per child, or $250 per month in the advance payments. And so we're talking about a really significant amount of money. We know that the expanded child tax credit is projected to cut child poverty by 40%. And indeed, when families were receiving the advanced payments, we already saw the really huge impact. There was a decrease in food insufficiency by 26%. Research has shown that families use these payments for food, for school expenses, housing costs, clothes, and more. And we also know from a number of studies that additional income like the child tax credit is associated with better educational performance for children and families with low incomes, as well as reduced stress and better health outcomes. Unfortunately, there are more than 4 million kids, if not a lot more than that, in the country who are at risk of missing out on the CTC payments because they're in families with no or very low income who don't have filing obligations and haven't recently or maybe ever filed taxes and may not know they have to do so in order to claim the child tax credit and other credits. And we know that many families also face other barriers connected to perhaps concern around immigration and others, and we'll talk a little more about that shortly. And so families who file their tax returns this year can get up to $3,600 per child through the expanded 2021 CTC. If they've missed any of the COVID stimulus payments, they'll be able to get that, which could be $600 to $3,200 per person. The federal earned income tax credit was also expanded, and families can get money through that. And then depending on where someone is located, they may be eligible for additional federal or state tax credits. And I made reference to this, but families who got the monthly CTC payments from the IRS last year will still need to file in order to get the remaining amount of their credit. And so just a few common questions. One question, we know that many of you may have large immigrant populations within your schools and your school districts, is what about immigrant families? And so adults without Social Security numbers can claim this credit as long as their children have Social Security numbers. And so parents or guardians can claim the CTC using what's known as an ITIN, or Individual Taxpayer Identification Number. And so this means that parents who are undocumented with children who have Social Security numbers are entitled to the full credit. Under current law, receiving the CTC or other tax credits won't impact somebody's immigration status, their ability to get a green card, or future immigration plans. And it's not considered in public charge determinations by USCIS. And we know families might have concern around confidentiality, and so we want to emphasize that the IRS is forbidden, with very, very limited exceptions, from sharing an individual's tax information or other information with federal agencies. And then finally, we often get a question from providers and from families about whether receiving the CTC will impact other federal public benefits. And this money does not impact federal public benefits that families receive, including SNAP, WIC, SSI, and most types of public and subsidized housing. So just to put this in context, we wanted to kind of take the example of a family with 4 children, ages 5, 7, 9, and 14, who didn't have earned income last year. The parents are filing their taxes with ITINs, and the children have Social Security numbers. So if they do file their tax returns this year, they'll get $3,600 for the child, for one child who's under 6, and then they'll get an additional $3,000 for the other kids who are over the age of 6, who are 6 and older. And so in total, that's $12,600. And that's a huge amount of money as is, but we want to emphasize that that's not including other state and federal credits, possible missed stimulus payments. So a really huge and kind of incredibly important amount of money right now. And I'll pass it over to Sarah.
Great, thank you so much. So like Julia said, you do not need to be a tax expert or know all of these rules in order to get the word out to your families. We've developed materials to make it really easy for you in multiple languages to help spread the word. And our key messages are as follows. So first, you could get thousands of dollars in federal money. Like Julia said, it is literally thousands of dollars depending on your situation. And that money is really helpful to families and individuals right now. One thing that we want to stress, and this was mentioned before, but you can have low or no income to get this money. So, you know, people often don't think that taxes are for them if they've never had to file before, but this is the year to file. If there's any year, it's this year. You need to get this money by filing a tax return. And then, like Julia noted, this money does not impact your status or the status of people you live with, and it does not count for most public benefits. So as to how schools have implemented these materials and gotten the word out, we have a presentation by Dr. Almia Beta, who is the superintendent of Chelsea Public Schools here in Massachusetts. And also she's joined by Daniel Mojica, who is the director of the Parent Information Center at Chelsea Public Schools. We were excited to have them at a recent training with the School Superintendents Association, and so now we are thrilled to hear from them.
It's great to be here. I am the superintendent at Chelsea Public Schools. We're just right outside of Boston. And so we are a school district with about 6,000 students, pre-K through 12. 83% of our students are first language is not English. We have 85.8% high needs, and 70.6% of our students are economically disadvantaged. We really recognize the need to develop relationships with our families, and how we did that needed to be different than pre-pandemic. So we worked on building trust with our families. We wanted to make sure that our students and families knew about the child tax credit and any missed stimulus payments. So this was extremely important to us. First, because this is a lot of money that can have a huge impact on our families. And our families, we were the hardest hit city in Massachusetts by COVID. So this was extremely important to us. Many of our families have lost income. They had suffered hardship due to COVID. There was potentially thousands of dollars for individuals to access, and we wanted to make sure that anyone who was eligible could receive the funding. And we also knew that at least 650 children in Chelsea would miss out on this money if they didn't sign up. And this is according to IRS data. And so this became extremely important to us. And second, we also know, and I say this always to our city manager and throughout this pandemic, is that the schools are the most trusted resources of information in our city. And given our population, many who are immigrants and have major distrust of our government, misinformation can spread, and schools, we can have a high impact on getting the right information at the right time. And so I really encourage my city leaders to say, I've encouraged them to please come to us. We will get information out, whether it's about the child's tax credit, whether it's about vaccinations, because again, schools are trusted. And so despite the schools not having tax knowledge, schools can have a huge influence and be the messenger and the connector to resources. And so what I'm going to do now is I'll introduce you to Daniel Mojica. He's our director of our Parent Information Center. He and his staff are on the ground. And so I'm turning it over to our wonderful director, Daniel Mojica.
Thank you so much, Dr. Beta. Thank you to the Coalition on Human Needs and ASA for this presentation. So Dr. Beta hit the nail on the head. Chelsea was it's a community that suffered a lot through COVID. So when Sarah reached out with this opportunity to get this word out on all this money that our families have access to or are entitled to, I jumped on it with approval of central office to kind of get the ball rolling, reaching out to my staff, letting them know that this is the next steps that we're going to do, and this is how we're going to go ahead and direct the calls that are coming into our office, because a lot of people, a lot of families, it's trusting the community leaders, trusting Chelsea Public Schools. So what we did was we used the resources provided that Sarah provided. Text messaging works very well for our families. A lot of our families work in locations where they don't have access to their phone immediately, and they miss our calls, and those lengthy messages sometimes just don't work for our families. So text messaging, they get to see it once they come out, either on break or after work, and they can go ahead and keep that on their phone and get back to it a little later. So we did send a text out to over 6,000 students to direct them to the Greater Boston Legal Services, which is an agency in Boston who offers great support for our families. That's something that Sarah and the Shaw Foundation had set up. So that resource was there. The key thing, what I find helpful, is to send out the initial text and do a follow-up text right before the day of an event, which kind of reminds parents, oh yeah, I had that on my calendar. It's great that they did remind me. Social media is also a great outlet. Sarah provided all the materials. We just posted on social media with the materials provided. We Chelsea-fied it so that it kind of talks to our families. And so social media, phone calls. Our families don't have a lot of email, but we do have those families that email is the best access for them. So we did all communication outlets. So the items that did work, social media, text messaging was very key, phone calls and word of mouth. Use the resources provided. Sarah provided some great resources. Local agencies, La Colaborativa, who made a big impact during the COVID, the pandemic. They were holding informational sessions so that parents can go there and just kind of find out a little bit more and where they can get the ITIN numbers and so on. And that's the work that we did here in Chelsea. I think that that it was a great run, and we're going to continue working off of that.
We do this, and I'm not the expert. Schools are not the expert, but we can point people in the right direction and to the resources. And so that's what we do. And we continue to do that in the middle of this pandemic. And the systems that we built will continue to use and learn from that. And again, we're happy to share whatever we've learned if anyone wants to reach out. What we discovered was that texting across the board was most effective. So if we had information that needs to go out, except for example, a survey, we would we'd blitz it out to all of our families, and right away within the first hour, we would get about 1,000 responses. And so it is the quickest way to reach families. So we would do that from central office. And then we can do a lot of follow-up at the individual schools as well, and communication at the school level. So there's central office level. And then we would, if we need more of a push, we would ask principals to push this out as well. And then as Daniel shared earlier, sending reminder texts is really helpful. So that is the most effective. So follow up with the text as well as the original text from several days ago, then another follow up.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you, Superintendent. That was really, really helpful to put it into context. And just want to add that when Chelsea sent those messages out, they got over 100 phone calls to their local tax help site, getting support on things like ITINs and answering immigration questions, and really helping kind of field responses. And also we had over 1,100 hits to our website that day. So a lot of people were coming and interested in this information. So thank you so much for getting the word out. I also had the opportunity to work with other schools and wanted to highlight some of the work that they've done. All of these school districts are in Massachusetts. So first, Boston Public Schools actually recently, a couple weeks ago, sent out a text message to all of their students, and I'm sorry, all of their families about the tax credits with a link to our website for more information, and also they included a phone number of Boston Tax Help Coalition. Within a day or two, we had over 8,000 hits to our website just from that text, and Boston Tax Help Coalition got hundreds of phone calls for help and assistance. So we know that this is a really great model if you have the ability to text. Everett Public Schools did something very similar. So big shout out to them. They also connected with their local tax help site that provides free tax support and put the phone number in there. And she also got a couple hundred phone calls just from that one text message. Revere Public Schools also, they did something a little bit differently. They sent out an email to families and faculty members, and kind of anything that they could do to get the word out, they did. I should actually note that all of these folks have also posted on social media, but it's kind of the more direct contact that tends to work. And that local tax site also had similar results. And finally, Attleboro Public Schools is planning to host a virtual event in English and Spanish with the option of interpretation in other languages as well next week. And so if Julia has all of these tools available in the toolkit, but just want to highlight, if you have any questions, we are happy to support and provide additional examples on what these amazing schools did to get the word out. So based off all of this work, we just had a few recommendations for schools who are looking to spread the word about tax benefits. So first, obviously communicate in ways that work best for your families. If you have the ability to text message, we highly encourage you to do so. We think, and especially with the Chelsea example, that is the most effective way to reach people where they're at, and they can access the information in their own time. You can also email, use social media, or whatever other tools you have at your disposal. Another idea that has worked is hosting a virtual event with a tax expert. So if you have someone locally, or if you want to connect with someone at the coalition, they can help provide you with someone. And if that's something you already do, we've some of our schools have done Facebook Lives, because that's already a part of what the superintendent hosts every week, but really integrating it into things that you're already doing. Leverage family liaisons if there's an opportunity to provide them with this information, so that they can talk to their families and just ask a simple question. Have you filed your taxes before? Have you ever thought about filing your taxes before? And then really just walking them through all of the money that folks can get right now is another effective way to do outreach. We also recommend sending out messages more than once. So sometimes folks need to hear a message more than once to really have it resonate with them. Use simple messaging. So we've developed our messaging very, very carefully, like I spoke about earlier, really leading with, you could get federal money. This is thousands of dollars on the table for you. And the way that you do that is by filing a tax return. Obviously, provide information in multiple languages. We have, our toolkit has many languages available for you. And then if possible, I think we've already talked about this, but include a phone number or link for help. So if you have a local tax help site, and Julia, I think, can connect you with someone if you don't, include that phone number and obviously talk to that person and make sure that's okay first. But if there's a VITA site or a low-income taxpayer clinic or someone that can help with ITINs, we highly recommend that you include a phone number or direct link for help. And now I'm going to turn it over to Julia to really walk you through the toolkit.
Great, thank you, Sarah. So we have a great toolkit here, thanks to the resources from the Find Your Funds Coalition and so many other partners. And on the slide, you'll just see a sample of flyers, text messages, emails. And if you go to this toolkit, you'll see ideas for ways to take action, the resources you'll need to do so, including text, email, robocall, samples, flyers. And then there's also a full toolkit if you want to get creative and use other resources to do other outreach. And you'll also see on that a list of info sessions and other information if you want to learn more. And so we really want to invite all of you to take action now. And we don't think doing so is too difficult. We hope that we've made it as easy as possible. And so you just have to take what we have. Feel free to edit it if you prefer, but it is, as Sarah said, already in 11 languages. And so we really encourage everyone to send out more than once mass communications to the families in your district, and you'll know best what's the best way to communicate with them. We encourage you to distribute flyers. And again, in the toolkit I just shared, you can see several different examples of flyers. And we know some of you might have already done this and are really eager to figure out what else you can do. And so we encourage schools and school groups and those working with parents and students to consider hosting a Q&A for parents and guardians and inviting a local tax or immigration expert. And as Sarah mentioned, if you need support connecting with someone locally, we're happy to help make those connections. And then also some of you might have in your district school tablets or computer labs that could be made available to families to access free tax filing software available through Get Your Refund, which was created in partnership with the IRS. So these are just some ideas. They're certainly not the universe of ideas, but we really hope that you'll take these resources and use them. And you're not alone in doing this. So here we have everyone's contact information, mine, Sarah's, Superintendent Abeyta, and Daniel's. And so please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions and if you want support really putting these resources into action. We know that 90% of kids are eligible for the CTC, and with your support, we can reach as many as possible, hopefully all of them. So thank you.